Thank you for coming on and sharing your testimony, your story. I'm really excited to hear it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, but like I was sharing with Alex before, I feel like the Lord's brought me a long way in terms of just realizing that how powerful testimony is, and we're talking about Revelation, just how we overcome by the word of their testimony, and how I feel like the enemy will try to convince you that it's really not that big of a deal, that like people are not going to understand, not going to relate. And just this last year, how much the Lord is opening up doors for me to share it and realize that oftentimes you're met with someone who's like, I knew someone who struggled with that, or I know, like, and just very touched by it because it's like very practically how the Lord working in your life in a very personalized way. And I feel like that's something anyone can relate to, you know?
It's so true. I was thinking about this too 2 days ago, how like our testimony can make like to defeat the lies of the enemy, where maybe someone, me, or I'm thinking something is impossible, but I'm hearing somebody's story that they got, how God took them through a situation that's so hard or seems seemingly impossible. It defeats the lies of the enemy,
Yeah.
where God can make a way for all of us.
Yeah, that's so true. I wrote down this verse this morning because I'm not the best at scripture memory. So sometimes I need a little bit of help. But so before coming to the Lord, grew up in a Christian household and such. So I knew the Lord, but just whenever you're covered in darkness, it's like really, and so talking about testimony, it's really like impossible to see all the Lord can do in your life because like you're actually blinded. And so this verse like really stuck out to me just to understand how powerful testimonies were to me whenever I was not walking in the Lord, so that I could see from someone else who's actually like walked through it. And it said, the God of this age has blinded the mind of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the
Wow.
image of God. And so it's like you cannot see the glory of who the Lord is because like you're blinded. And so like how the testimony is like we're walking in the light. And so for the people who are in the darkness, it's like they can see like the display of the glory of Christ, which I think is so beautiful because that's ultimately like what changes hearts is like his glory, you know? And
Yes.
that it's so important because it's like how will they know if they're blinded? Like they have to see from us. Like, you know?
Yes.
And so that was the same with me whenever I was, you know, not walking with the Lord. I would look at testimonies, research, and watch videos and stuff because I was like, I want that, you know? I just couldn't
Right.
see it, how he would do it in my life, and I couldn't until
Oh
I
wow.
surrendered to the Lord. But I would see it in their lives, and that would bring a, you know, just tug on my heart. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So tell us like from the beginning.
So I think what took me a while for me to begin comfortable, like actually sharing my testimony, was the fact that, one, the way that culture displays it, and two, the fact that it's not really talked about, but it is so common. And so my struggle in my life, which I know I have many, but my main battle was with an eating disorder, and it started pretty young. So I have that, what a lot of people, some people have, is growing up in a Christian household and, you know, having just really powerful moments on the mission field in Africa and stuff where it's like these people who are, you just see the abundance of joy actually being shown of the Lord if people don't have a lot, and like just people being, you know, demons cast out and stuff from a young age. So I'm like,
Wow.
I knew the Lord was like real and I loved him and like I had these powerful like moments with him and stuff, but I never had a moment, I think, a trial in my life, which is like, you know, how the Bible talks about how like trials refine our faith, like, and
Oh yeah.
how important they are, that it's like from the outside you see these trials, but to the Lord it's like we were being refined, that we're like continually going to him and like being rooted in him. But I hadn't had that, like, and I guess, you know, those come later in life. So whenever I was about 13, I got hit with an eating disorder, which got hit. I say it that way because it was very unexpected to me. It's not like you wake up in the morning and is like, I want to have, like, go on a diet that's going to wreck my life, destroy my family, like, bring me to the end of myself, like, bring me to my deathbed. Like, no one wakes up and thinks that. And so it usually starts pretty innocently. And so for me, it started with the puberty time and like just going through changes and like not feeling very comfortable being in a family where it was like image mattered and stuff. And so it was all that kind of like playing together. And so I was like, I'm just gonna go on a diet. And like I'm a pretty like, if I set my mind to it, very stubborn, like I'm gonna do it. And so I was like, I'm just gonna lose, I don't know, X amount of pounds in 2 weeks and then I'll be good. And so I remember telling that to my sister and she was like, I don't think you should do this. Like it just seems a little extreme. And so it's funny to see like hindsight, something that seems so innocent, how the enemy will use something that is so small, which you think is like enticing. Like, that it's like, oh, what's really the big deal? And so I think, but that's like where my heart began to become astray to the Lord, is I started to value something other that was not him. And that was like my image. And so eventually, as I began on this diet, I was in 8th grade. It rapidly took a toll on me. I began losing weight. And I just, so for anyone who's been on a diet, gone on a fast, you know what it feels like when you're not eating like food. Like you feel just drained. Like you're like, I can't wait till this fast is over.
Yes.
Like,
You're thinking about food. Like I want sushi. I want all of that.
Your post-fast meal.
Yeah.
Dream about it. So that was kind of like what it was like with an eating disorder. Is I'd try to sneak over to my grandparents because they had a scale in the morning. I thought I was so subtle, but like that their alarm would go off. I'd try to like run to their bathroom to use their scale. And so it shows like the sneakiness of like when something is starting to take toll of you, like you don't really care what you're doing or like what it looks like, even if it's going into your grandparents at 5 a.m., turning off their alarm to the bathroom to use a hairbrush when really I wanted to use their scale. And so like it took a toll where I was like, okay, I know this is becoming something that is, bigger than just a diet, because why would I want to be weighing myself every day? And so as the numbers began to go down, I began like more and more like kind of like thrilled by it in a way that like that control felt good. I began to get scared of gaining weight, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I was like, I've never heard of an eating disorder before, and it was very unexpected, and neither did my family. And so I think that's something that can be very scary for the whole dynamic, is that you see someone that you love in your life like fading away and you're like, I don't understand, like why aren't you eating, like, and stuff. And so and then for me, I'm like, I can't, like I'm not willing to like let this go. And so being 13, I was like, I don't really understand what's going on, but and so it was and so it's not something that I think a lot of people will understand, because it's very like psychologically taxing, all these lies that you have going on in your head, just so much stuff. And also you're not thinking clearly because you're not eating, like you're starving yourself, you're always dreaming about food, like always thinking about food.
So you're thinking about food, but you don't
I don't eat it.
You don't eat it. You don't want to eat it, or you just
it was, so I guess with an eating disorder, mine started, there's a few different types of eating disorders. There's anorexia, which is like restrictive, and then there's bulimia, which like you just eat a lot and then you'll either exercise to burn it off or throw it up, so that you like actually don't have any of the calories. So with me like starting off with like restrictive, I just like wouldn't eat any of the food because I was afraid, I guess, of like gaining that weight. And then you get really stuck on the number on the scale. So it becomes a very obsessive thing of being like, okay, starting counting how many calories you're eating. It's a very like, if I was to think of a very like black and white world, it has like no color. Like it's not like a fruitful life of like fun and stuff, especially as a kid when you're playing and stuff.
Yeah.
And not being able to have any energy like to play, but like just sleeping all the time. Like it's a very dark thing. Like it's should not be glamorized. I think sometimes like people grow up in different households where they're encouraged to lose weight as a young kid and stuff, and so you don't realize the toll that it will have on that kid, especially because like such a developmental time and like changes going on and stuff, that is like a small seed can go a very long way in a very negative way, and so I think, so at 13, I remember I was cleaning a house with my family. My dad and I were going back and forth, which is also another thing, like, with eating disorders, is you try to manipulate and control. And as a kid, my parents were terrified, so he would try to, get me to eat these high protein calorie shakes and stuff. So a lot of it is focused on, like, the external, which is good because it's like, you need those calories for substance, but also, like, there's a lot of it that's internal, that's like sometimes that's not as much as dressed, because you just see, okay, the crucial part right now is like you're fading away, you need food, like we need to address that. But also there's an internal part that's like your heart is also starving, because like you're feeding something, like literally it's starving, but also like emotionally it's starving because like you're feeding yourself with something that is so dead, like, and so full of lies, and like, so it just really impacts you in that way. And
Wow.
yeah, and I know it affects people of all different ages. And so for me, I went to my first treatment whenever I was 13, and it was after I had like passed out, went to the hospital, and my family, like, I woke up and my family was all around me whenever I passed out, and I was like terrified. I was like, what just happened? And so like I got in the car and I immediately began trying to convince them why I should not go to treatment, because I was like, I do not want to go to treatment, please don't send me. And so there's that kind of, wouldn't say manipulative, but also that like belief that I'm like, I can do this on my own, like I can do it, like. And I think that's a really big lie that the Lord had to break in my life, was that this is something that I can do on my own. I can fight this, like, in my own strength. I'll get better on my own, because there's a lot of times when you're like, I do want to, have energy. I do want to, not have this thing, like, affecting my family. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm tired of it. But the biggest thing is, like, you think you can do it on your own, and you can't. And as a kid, I didn't really understand what it meant to surrender that to the Lord. So I went to my first treatment center. Sorry, you can ask questions anytime during it.
Yes.
Yeah, interrupt me at all.
Okay, I will. I have some questions already.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
But keep going.
Okay.
Yes.
I went to my first treatment center, and that was really good from what I remember. Like, I left there not feeling like I had this powerful, like, encounters with the Lord where it was like I was surrendering this to Him. I left there feeling like I got this on my own. I'm going to control this. Immediately failure for success. Immediately set up for failure is what I meant to say.
Right.
Because I had left there with a game plan that it was me who's going to be controlling things. It was me who's going to decide what my life looked like, what my recovery looked like, that I still wanted to be in control of, like, my eating, my weight. There were just certain things I didn't want to surrender. And so a big thing at that time is family-based. I forget what they call it, but basically as a kid, it's like you go home and your parents are supposed to be in charge of things. And like as a kid, you just like let your hands off the rails. I was not that way. I was too stubborn, and I was like, you guys are not going to be controlling it. Like, I'm going to be like in charge of this. And so, but while in treatment center, we had our first family week. And that completely wrecked me, just because basically family week is like the most intense thing you could ever have to go through. It's how people come into a room and you have like two hurts, and then like two ways that you've hurt them, two ways they've hurt you, and you talk about a forgiveness kind of thing. And something that's like, yeah, it's very, and I'm in the center of this chair and my family's around me, and so we're like discussing how I've hurt them with my eating disorder, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was like, this is brutal, but also so good, because like they wouldn't be there if they didn't love me. So this is a bag, and it's not full of all of them. I've got rid of a lot of them, but it's letters that I've received over being at treatment centers, in terms of like, while they couldn't be there for me because I was never in my hometown. Tucson doesn't have any eating disorder treatment center, so I'd always have to go. Yeah, so I'd either have to go to like a small town way outside of the Dune Docks in Arizona, or like to Denver and stuff, and I'll share that more in my story. Yeah. So really the only way that they could be there for me was through calls and through letters. And so I'll share how God used those letters in my life later, and He still does. Every time I read them, I usually sob. But So, so back to the storyline. After I left my treatment center, I kind of came in gun ho that this was about like not wanting to let go of the reins, and so went back home. And immediately 2 weeks out of treatment, I had lost like the amount of weight needed for me to go back and to treatment, and I was like, and I remember my brother. Which we've been to plenty of family therapy, so I don't think he minds me talking about this. Family therapy, it's very good. But so was very upset because we were best friends before my eating disorder, and as a guy, like, you don't really understand, especially as a 14-year-old guy, you're like, why is my sister not eating? Why does she want to go back to a treatment center when she won't just like want to stay here and play with me, kind of thing? And so I remember him finding out that I was going back, and he like just said something like "F you" or whatever, and like we didn't talk for like 2 years after that, and like it broke me because I'm like, this is probably one of the closest people in my life, but also just to see the impact of like the enemy already at work, that it's like, okay, yes, this is like an eating disorder, that's like taking a full toll on me physically, and like it's about food, but it's also not about food. You see how the enemy's already planting seeds of division and like just confusion.
What are some of the lies that the enemy's been telling you at that time?
At that time, probably that a big one that took a long time for me was that like nobody's gonna get it. Like nobody's like gonna understand. No one's gonna get you, or because that keeps you silent. Like in terms of whenever I'd have these thoughts.
Wow.
Like I was like, who can I tell? Like none of my friends, have had an eating disorder. None of my family really understand. Like, and so I feel like he'd plant seeds where it was like I felt alone. In terms of even seeds where it wasn't distort the truth, like, and so that's a big thing about these letters, is that a lot of times I would feel alone, like that they didn't care, they didn't understand, and the Lord would always bring me back to how many times they would come and visit, how many times they would write me letters and all these things where it's like, yes, the enemy can tell you like things that will distort like what reality is, but like the proof's in the pudding, like in terms of like whenever hindsight, when I look back, I'd be like, I was like covered in people where I might have felt like all I was hearing was the enemy's voice of being like, I'm alone, like no one understands and stuff like that, but still the Lord was covering me, and like that's just his goodness and being like providing me with a family that showered me like with love, even though I was not able to notice it or receive it till like actually like later. And so that was one of the big lies, and I think another one was this only affects me, which yeah, and that so many years like I believed that. And I was like, this is just about me. Why do they care? Like, why does it matter to them if I'm eating or not? Why does it matter to them like what I weigh? Like, and stuff like that I really believed that for so long. Whenever like in actuality, like seeing with my brother, you can see that it's like it does not only affect me, like it. And I think that's also like the way that the Lord created us, is that like we're so intertwined, like, in terms of like our family dynamics, our church, our friends, that like the way that we're wired is truly like a body, in terms of like one person is hurting and like affects everybody. Like everyone comes and like, goes to help because like it's what love is. And so I thought it was only affecting me, and to see the ripple effect of how it was affecting my whole family was, and how it would continue to affect my family until I surrendered it, was like crazy to me. Just that enemy will try to convince you anything, that it's not that big of a deal. Like it's just about like weight. Like it doesn't really matter how much you weigh. Like, and so all these things that are, which I think back to your testimony, how like how those demons were saying things that sounded good.
Yeah.
And like how often the enemy will tell us things that sound good, but like aren't true, and like they're actually using to be so divisive.
Yes.
And so at that time, after my brother and I had that little rift, I was like hurting a lot, but I wouldn't address any of my pain because, like, one, when you're not eating, like, you're emotionally not really there. And so, like, I was just numbing. And so I wrote down another verse, which I don't have to look it up because this one I actually know. But it was basically like, you'll have a heart of stone and I'll give you, like, a heart of flesh kind of thing. I truly had, like, a heart of stone. And, like, in terms of I just did not feel much. And, like, after I had passed out or with my brother, and I'll go on to more stuff, is I didn't, like, feel any of it until I had come to the Lord. And then he, little bit by little bit, would just bring me back to these moments, would have just, like, wreck me. And, like, not a bad way, but in a healing way. Like, that I need to feel it. And so I think after, that obviously affected me, but I just kind of numbed myself with, like, the eating disorder and, like, going right back into, like, these calories mindset and, like, numbers and just food. Like, everything was about, like, my eating disorder.
It's so, like, thoughts can be so huge. That's why lies can just change all of our behavior and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true.
And the enemy doesn't want us to share and lies to us that people want to understand or we're alone. These are all like just such lies.
Yeah, so powerful. And the Bible talks about how, like, when he's talking to the Pharisees, he's like, your father is the father of lies. Like, everything he speaks is, like, not true, and, like, you listen to his voice, and so it's like everything that the enemy says is, like, it's built on lies, and so which it can seem so powerful, but, like, whenever you, like, pop it, it just, like,
it's nothing.
It's
like,
nothing.
Yes.
And so it's funny how much of my behavior was dictated off something that was a lie.
And one of the things that that you mentioned that I thought was really powerful too, it was the lies of believing that you can do it on your own.
Yeah. That was a turning point, which I'll share more as I come to the Lord, in terms of that I had to surrender. And it's ultimately pride, being
It
like,
is pride.
like, I can do this on my own.
Yeah.
And then whenever you don't care anymore, in terms of being like, okay, like, I'll give this to you, Lord, it's like such a breath of fresh air, realizing that's a gift. Like, it's a gift that it's not on your own. And then also relationally, like, it's so much more powerful whenever people are able to support you,
Yes, and surrender it all to God.
Yeah.
One of my favorite verse is, my grace is sufficient to you, and then for my power is made perfect in weaknesses.
Yeah, it's so
and
true.
God wants us to be in that position where we surrender it all and we humble ourselves, and so He can move in and through us.
Yeah, it just took me a long time to get there.
For a lot of us, me too. Me too. It takes some work to realize that, we can't do it on our own.
Yeah. Still today sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But after, wish I could say that was the end of, like, my turning point of, like, that thing with my brother, but it wasn't. And so my mom decided to keep me home because of my sister and my brother, and I had two older brothers. I have three older brothers, but my youngest sister and my youngest brother, who's a little older than me, we were all very close, so she kept me home for them. Like, in terms of, like, she's like, I want you to be able to be with them. Versus it wasn't necessarily, like, God uses all things, but I wasn't doing very well, like, being at home. And so for the next 2 years, I was going to school, doing soccer, all these things, but, like, my inward life was all about, like, food and my eating disorder every day being governed by that. Like, waking up and it would be, like, I was a slave to it. It, like, felt like, Even when I didn't want to, it felt like that's all it slowly became something that was, like, a diet to something that began to rob me of relationships, began to rob me. Eventually, I couldn't play soccer. It became slowly my identity, which is really interesting how, like, something that would start so small, like, and so harmless, slowly became everything to me, that it's like, even the days that I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm like, but what else do I have? Like, it slowly became something I'm like, I don't have anything else except my eating disorder now. And so at 15, I'm trying to think what happened here. Okay, so my mom decided to send me to ERC because I was, I think, like 70 pounds at 16 years old, like, not very good.
How many pounds?
70.
Wow.
So like
Yeah.
typical is like 120. So like 50 pounds under the weight of what I'm supposed to be.
Wow.
And not like I don't have really energy to get out of bed in the morning. Like just, yeah, not really to have conversations, to laugh. And so what's cool about that is that while I didn't have energy to laugh, I remember going to ERC, which is a amazing recovery center and eating disorder recovery center in Denver, and my parents sent me out there because it's very good. So I got there. They took my labs, and immediately I was at the treatment center. Like a ambulance came and picked me up, and I'm like, "What's going on? Why do I have to get in this ambulance?" And they're like, you're in a critical state right now, and like we need to send you to the ICU." And I was like, "What?" Like I feel fine, which was like crazy because my body had gotten so used to this state of, these electrolyte imbalances, and so now I'm in nursing, which is cool because I can understand it. But basically, all my lab values were off so much that it's like my heart like almost like could easily stop beating because of all the just minerals and
Wow.
electrolytes that you
Yeah.
need to like send the conducting and all that kind of stuff. Like I didn't have any of it. And so just because of my deficiency. And so they sent me to the ICU, and I remember being in this bed and what I was thinking, which is crazy to me being in the ICU, and my brain thinking, okay, I still want to control this. I don't want to eat that. Like, I still can't weigh that. Like, that's what I was not hit with a point where I was like, I'm almost dead. Like, I need to give this to the Lord. I was still, which is funny how there's so many, like, breaking points, but it's like, it really is on us to be like, I surrender, Lord, but giving us so many of these opportunities, but, like, I still wasn't hit with the reality of it yet. And so my mom was on the other side talking to a doctor, and the doctor's like, I honestly don't know if she's going to make it these next few days. Like, you're just going to have to be, I don't think she said praying, but, like, basically, like, that's what all my family was doing was, like, praying because I didn't realize it at that point in the hospital that I was close to dying, but I was just too consumed with still my eating disorder. And what's hindsight 2020, what I think back to prayer, and whenever I see someone else struggling and the Lord brings me to prayer, is that moment in the ICU. I find out later that the Lord would wake up some of my mom's friends in Tucson and be like, pray for Regan tonight while I was in the ICU. And so I really think there's so many times where it's like, I should not be alive. Like, I should not be alive. And it was only prayer that was covering me. And, like, the goodness of God that so my heart was not fixated on him. It was fixated on my weight and food and stuff, but he was still preserving me, which I just think is so beautiful, for him, like, later down the road. And so I just didn't see it until I came to him later. But so, yeah, I was in the ICU, and then I went back to ERC, and I remember the question they asked me upon my interview was, like, what is something that you, like, miss that you want to gain from your recovery, or from, like, being here? And I said, I just miss laughing. My laugh is very, like, loud and just, like, takes a lot of energy. And so with my eating disorder, I didn't have energy to laugh. And so it was, like, and I couldn't really find jokes funny. Like, I just, everything was, like, the meh emoji. It kind of felt like the meh emoji.
Yeah.
And so and which is so cool now because that's, not like, this isn't a boast. I feel like it's more to the Lord that the compliment I get the most is, I love your laugh. And I'm like, that always reminds me of the goodness of God, because I'm like, that is the one thing that I didn't have energy for in my eating disorder. And, like, I feel like the Lord has given me such a loud, distinct laugh that it's like, I feel like I have his laugh, like, in terms of, like, he's given me, like, such a beautiful laugh that represents, like, his goodness and his life in me, whereas I was feeding on the eating disorder, I didn't even have a laugh,
Yeah.
Which I know, like, it sounds kind of odd,
huge.
but yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about this later.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so the letters were throughout treatment, and so it'd either be, cousins or aunts and uncles or family members, friends that would send me letters and stuff. And so in moments that, you feel alone or whatever, like, it would bring you such an encouragement boost, because it'd be like, okay, they're still there, they're still, like, advocating me, their life might be, they might be doing the things that I'm not present for, back in Tucson, but, like, I'm still part of their life. They're still thinking of me, kind of thing. So I picked out some of the letters, because, just to kind of show a little bit, a lot of my favorite letters are from my sister Alexa. If Alexa, you're ever reading that or watching this, but just because we would play games together and stuff, so she would send me all the drama that was going on in her life and stuff. And so there are some times that just seeing these letters, the way that was like affecting people. So this is a letter that I'm not sure what treatment center I was at, but my sister sent it to me, and this is just a little snippet. And she says, "But yeah, when you first left, I didn't feel much, like the first week or two. I didn't miss you, because we'd go on not talking for that long sometimes. But I miss you so freaking much. I want to rant to you about all the drama happening and about the funny combos and relationships I have with people, but I can't. I've always imagined what it'd be like without you in my life. Absolutely, wholeheartedly hate it." Okay, cry break. Right now, writing this, I want to cry, so please get better and come back to me so I can have my best friend back. So, and let's see, that was from my sister, and so she is now my best friend, and I think the greatest gift that Lord has given me. And this one's from my dad. He says, "You have not ruined anyone's life. You have not ruined our family. No one is angry. All is forgiven, and you don't need to feel like a burden. God designed our family, and you're a critical part of it. You're still my favorite," and goes on and on. But just moments that is like, when we're talking about the enemy's lies, that I'm alone, or like that it's only affecting me and stuff like that. It's like these people that I can read more too, but I probably cry more. But just how impactful those words were in those moments, and still now. Obviously, I still get emotional reading them because I still remember like what it was like, and I still realize how greatly it affected my family. And so just to kind of see, I think of it as like, like two sides of a coin. I guess like one side of the coin is like kind of like the life with like the enemy and all this like chaos and like hurricanes and whatever going on, like this destruction. And then on the other side, when I gave my life to the Lord, like true, like what it means for restoration and what it means for like redemption and stuff, and to like actually just sit there and like watch it, like it is crazy,
What led you to the Lord?
Okay, so that's my whole story going back and forth and stuff, and these moments that feel like they would be breaking moments, but like never really broke me. And so I think this is why Lord showed me it's so important that He had all of my heart, is because like when He didn't have all my heart, something else would grow, and like and it would not be very pretty. And so I won't go too much into this, but I'll share just a little bit how the Lord used it. I got into a relationship with somebody, and I remember just like talking to them about the Lord, like their importance to me and stuff. And and then I kind of had a check in my spirit. So the relationship ended, and I wanted to give them another shot. I went back to them. And so in this relationship, they weren't very good. They ended up taking advantage of me. And I didn't really like know how to communicate that to people, just because it was like a lot of pain. Wasn't really sure what had happened, and just all the stuff that was like, okay, like where do I kind of go from here? So after that, the next few months were a lot of just like feeling very empty in terms of like, God, I don't even have like strength to know even how to go about this. And like, so seasons like that, you can feel like, what is the purpose of this? Like, I feel like, I'm lost, like I'm broken and stuff, but I see hindsight how the Lord was using that to bring me to Him. And so that was really my breaking point. I feel like everyone has different breaking points, but
Yeah.
That was my breaking point, and something that was interesting to me because it was like I'd already been baptized, so I didn't really understand why, like at that time, but the Lord really highlighted, like, I want you to get baptized, like as a symbol that, like, he knew that my heart was ready to give him my yes in terms of, like, everything. And so I was like, okay, like, I'm going to get baptized. And my family was like, you've already been baptized. What's the big deal? I'm like, you don't understand. Like, this is a big deal because, like,
Yeah.
I'm now saying that I'm done, like, in terms of having other loves, like, besides him. And so he put that on my heart, and I got baptized, and you think, oh, everything's like butterflies after that. Like, it's not. Like, I had so much to work through, like, after, it's not just like a pretty picture after. It's like slowly the Lord working and all these things that had a lot of, like, I think of it like a broken city, and like he's rebuilding this like broken city that had been kind of put it, but he builds it more beautiful.
Yeah. Right.
And so, like, going back to like the relationship with my brother Reed, it's probably now one of the relationships I hold closest to me, because I'm like, I see how the Lord has restored that. And of course, it's hard work, like going to family therapy and talking through about forgiveness, or
Wow.
having open conversations with Reed about stuff, and just building new memories, which isn't built around like eating disorder or like just as destruction.
Wow.
It takes time.
Yeah.
But it also is like so worth it. And so I've seen how, like, in every area and relationship of my life, how the Lord has shown up and how much he cared about that. Because I didn't realize how much it mattered to him. But whenever I wanted to leave Tucson, he really called me here, brought me to nursing school here, and I was frustrated. I was like, I really want to go like out to missions and stuff, but he wanted me here, and I did not understand. And like this last year and a half has been the most transformative, like,
Wow.
family, everything, like just everything that I didn't even realize needed to be addressed, like he's brought up and addressed. And like so I think, a lot of these like verses and stuff that you see about like him restoring and redeeming and stuff, like sometimes they can kind of sound like, oh, it's just, like something that I've memorized in, like, I don't know, my church one time. But like when you actually tangibly like watch like the Lord work in those kind of ways, it like it just changed me to understand his heart in terms of just restoration. And so I encourage like people who are struggling with, eating disorders, and it really can go under any topic, but just that are seeing like the destruction in their own life and their relationships, and things that they, can feel very hopeless about, alone, feel like they can get it on themselves, like, or do it by themselves. Like, just that you take a lesson from my book and realize that until that crossroad with the Lord, like, there is no other way forward. Like, there is no, like,
So true.
like, it can go a little bit circles, until you come to him. But
That's so true. Like every road is a dead end, and God will continue to pursue us and humble us until we realize we can't do it on our own.
yeah, and can be a very terrifying thing. Like, I was talking to my family this week, and I was, we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, like how like your mind is like blinded to the Lord, like to the glory of Christ.
Yeah.
I remember before surrendering, how that eating disorder had become my identity, like had slowly become like a small thing to everything. That I was like, Lord, I have this now that I know what it is and it sucks, but I know that like I have it. Like, are you going to be enough? Like, if I surrender it all to you, like, will you be enough? And so I think that is like sometimes scary, and like the part of surrender is like,
Yeah.
like, until you know him, like, it's terrifying, because it's like, I'm surrendering to someone who I'm gonna know. Like, that you want to have all me, but will you be enough? And I think what I've realized, I wrote this down because it, like, really, I think, hit home for me, was how the Lord talks about broken cisterns. And let me see if I'm able to find it. But basically how... Okay, my people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. And so I think they're talking more about just cisterns here, but but so I think of that as like my eating disorder, like, and so many things that we turn to that is like they're broken cisterns. We keep filling them with water, but it's like leaking everywhere. It's like it will not sustain us. But how like to the Lord, He's like, I am like the stream of living water. I never like He's so full, and like
Yeah.
I think that was just like kind of a
Wow.
trust fall I had to take into the Lord.
Yes.
Like, and just not really realizing. Yeah, walking that out took me some time, but realizing that I had spent so much time, like, going to the eating disorder to fulfill me, that what did it look like to go to the Lord to fulfill me? Like, practically, what did it look like? And so, Alex, we're talking about this a little bit earlier, but so it's really been like 2 years since I feel like I really gave my yes to the Lord, that He's brought me to just being with Him, like in the mornings, and like just spending time with Him, and realizing that like every morning I wake up and I feel like I'm empty in terms of like I need Him. And like what does that look like to like that's how we're wired. Like every day I feel like every person wakes up and they need something like to fulfill them. And so it's like, who are we, or what are we going to turn to? And so
The bread of life.
yeah, the bread of life. So much better. It's like so much better to have His rest and like His peace and everything like that after you've lived things that are so much different. It's like a breath of fresh air,
Yeah, I think it's powerful that you said it was like a trust fall when the moment you surrendered, because it's like you haven't discovered the fullness of His goodness yet. I mean,
Yeah.
for all of us, it's going to be our entire life and beyond and the rest of eternity to
Yeah.
really understand how good God is. But I also just think that's so powerful when about the trust, that word. And I
Yeah.
think our whole life is going to be a continual trusting God
Yeah.
and how good He is.
Yeah.
And there will be moments when, when after we have surrendered our life to Him, He will ask us to go, certain things, do certain things, have certain callings that it might still, there's just going to be so much unknown.
Yeah.
And it's like a continual trust, like a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I believe with all of my soul that when we follow God faithfully, He will just continue to surprise us in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. And it's just because like you can see it in other people's lives, but then whenever you're actually walking it out by yourself, it's like He wants that relationship with you. So like you have to trust that like, okay, you are going to be there for me. You are going to be there for me. You are going to be able to fill me with everything I need. That this other thing X, Y, and Z, whether it be eating disorder, alcohol, like whatever addiction like has fulfilled me, like, and see where it's led me, and like trust that He'll fill you with everything that you need. And so I think yeah, it was scary, but I knew that that like seeing from my story, I think so often sometimes we don't realize all the ways, I probably still don't realize all the ways that the Lord has pursued me and been so good to me, and that He kept pursuing until I was ready, to surrender to Him. But this is the other prop that I brought, and I brought it because I was looking for a butterfly. But you make these little books in treatment center, and so I had this book, and it has hope on it, and then in it is just like little encouraging things, like
Oh, wow.
I say I owe my recovery to His love, like the Lord's love and stuff. But I remember one time when I was walking and like just feeling like overwhelmed by all these lies and stuff. Did the butterflies because I think like the verse like seek me and you'll find me. Like
Yeah.
I like was calling out to the Lord on this walk. I was like with my mom, and I was just like I do not feel you. Like I do not feel your love. I feel so alone. Like I've just felt so much weight on me, like just depression. And I was like, please, can you like do something? And just asked Him. I was like, can you send something, do something to show that you notice me, kind of thing. And so on that walk, we just kept going, and like these flood of butterflies came, and I was like, okay, that's crazy. And so, and I know like that might look like to someone else is just like a flood of butterflies, but for the next like few weeks in Tucson, there were just like butterflies everywhere, and I felt like the Lord was sending them to be like, I notice you, like,
Wow.
and so now, that's my thing with the Lord is butterflies, but like, I think just in moments like that, how personal like of a God like the Lord is,
So personal.
yeah, that it's like of course he notices us, but at
Yeah.
that time, like I just didn't see it, so I encourage people to like just ask him and like seek him like and be very honest, because I was like that wasn't a thought I felt comfortable with or like saying out loud, but I just like just in your seeking, just be very real with God and like
We can't hide from him.
yeah.
And we have to be real, and Bible talks about also humble ourselves before him. God loves the humble. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a little bit uncomfortable at times, and you may not, feel like you see it right away or anything like that, but like he always shows up. Like he's always faithful to respond to that.
Yeah. One of the encouraging verse I really love is Matthew 5. I think it's when Jesus started his sermon on the Sermon on the Mount. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will see the kingdom of God." And it's a lot of our testimonies. We were poor in spirit, like we're so at such a low point in our lives, but then God reaches to us.
Yeah.
Through in that moment, because a lot of us, we face that probably the end of our road, but we tried our ways and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And God, that's where God wants us. A lot of us.
That's what I was talking with my friend this week about that verse, and I was like, I really feel like that is something that the Lord is teaching me, that like the days I wake up and I'm like, sorry Lord, I have a test today, like I need to do this, and then later in the day I'm like, I feel so empty, and it's like every day I don't spend time with the Lord, I realize how poor in spirit I am. That it's like I need him, and like so I think that is a very humbling thing for me, and like but also very rewarding, because it's like then we get to spend time with him, but it's like every day, like it's not like a one-time poor in spirit, it's like every day, where are we getting our source from, and like he is our source, but
so true.
That was something that's like as you become as you walk with him, stuff he'll show you, but I know eating disorders aren't really talked about a lot, and so that was something that I wrestled with the Lord, of being like, okay, like this is between me and you, like this is our story, like this is just me and you, because I do not want to share this, like I do not
I can relate.
I don't want people to know, like, and just like in his goodness and his love, he breaks that, like in terms of being like, just like, okay, like, but is this like about you, or is this about me? And like slowly like breaking that off of me, and realizing that like I don't want people out there to be suffering in silence, whenever it's like they're blinded to like the true, like where to go, like who the Lord is, and like so hearing a testimony of like, okay, like tangibly this is how the Lord worked in someone's life, because in treatment centers they're very good, like in terms of they're strict, like they'll like restore your weight and stuff, but none of them talk about like the Lord, and like I think it's to be expected, we live in a secular world, but so often I'd go there, and something that really kept me stuck for a while was this like victim mentality that I feel like sometimes you can kind of get at these treatment centers, because they'll be like, oh, don't worry, like you have this eating disorder because your dad was really mean to you, like you're entitled to kind of like have it, like in terms of being like a heart of repentance. And so that was like, I don't know if that makes much sense, but like
it does.
Something the enemy I feel like is feeding people is just like having this victim mentality, where it's like you don't have to own like what, like that this is actually like sin, like that you don't have to like repent from this, because like this happened to you and you're entitled to like feel this way or do this. And I'd see that
it's so common nowadays.
so common.
Yeah.
Like so common. But what,
Yeah.
and I felt that for a while because, I mean, like, that's what my therapist would tell me. It would be like, you lived in a family that was all about image, which they, like, really are not, but, like, that are all about image, so it makes sense this happened to you, and, like, kind of, like, woe is me, you know? Like, you're right. Like, I was treated unfairly, which is, there are instances where it's, like, there's, like, pain and hurt and stuff and working through that forgiveness, but, like,
But we all fall short.
we all
Like,
fall
yeah,
short.
we all sin, we all make mistakes. And,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we're all held accountable. And so something that, like, the Lord
Yeah.
renewed my mind was when it says, you know, God doesn't tempt us, but, like, we're drawn away by our own desires. And I was like, whoa, okay, so that means that this whole thing, this whole
Wow.
eating disorder was my desire. Like, it wasn't my family, like, and what they did to me and everything like that. It's like, no, it's our choice, like, you know? And so that's something I
That's
guess,
good.
yeah.
We ultimately we do have free choice, and we can blame outside forces, including the enemy,
Yeah.
as much as we want. But if you look at Genesis 3, the enemy didn't force Eve
Yeah.
to eat.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
But
asked
sometimes
her.
we buy into those lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very more, like, comfortable in the moment to be like, I don't have to repent of this. Like, of course, okay, I'm gonna do that, you know.
Yeah.
But then, like, the fruit of that, it draws you further away from the Lord. But something that I just got frustrated with at treatment centers is, like, it felt like that was the main thing that the enemy was feeding, you know, all these people. And so it's like, how are you ever going to find freedom at a place where you're going to for healing whenever the answer is, like, worldly worldly outcome, like, situations? And so, like, of course, like,
That's good.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was, and so it was a little disheartening for me because I was like, okay, in these treatment centers are very honest. I feel like I can talk about, like, you know, like, my struggles and stuff, but at home, like, I don't feel like anyone understands, but, like, they don't talk about the Lord at treatment centers, so, like, where is that kind of merge? And so, like, my heart and prayer is that, like, there's gonna be, like, a bridge gap and being like, you can talk about these things and, like, the Lord will meet you, like, in terms of being like, treatment centers is where you talk about that stuff and the church is where you don't. It's like the bridge,
We
like,
need all of those. It's
yeah,
a physical, there's a physical cause, and there's, physical, emotional, but also we can't take away the spiritual
yeah,
aspect of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how, or the Lord will use my story or whatever, but I would encourage if anybody who's, like, listening, just to reach out to Alex or whatever, but just realize that or reach out to somebody, like,
Right.
that is, close with you or,
Yeah.
next to you or anybody, like, and just realize that you can share it with somebody, and that there is hope, and you might not be able to see it or understand what it's going to look like in a year or whatever, but just instead of going, like, on these, like, you know, merry-go-rounds of, like, you know, a victim mentality and never changing and, like, treatment centers and stuff, which I've been on, realizing there is a way to, like, true change and, like, transformation. It's so much more simple than these self-help workbooks of, like, you know, going through all this stuff, like, jumping through these hoops and whatever, and, like, when the Lord's requirement is just come to me, like, you know, and that's so much simpler, and, like, we overcomplicate things. And so,
Right.
yeah, that's what my prayer is for this, like, next generation, and, like, with girls who's struggling. I know it affects guys too, but this is, eating disorders are I think the top, like, I don't know if it's close to top mental health related deaths. Like, you think it's not something that is serious because it's, like, about food or weight or whatever, but, like, top related mental health death is a big deal. And, like, whenever you see the spiritual side and being like, okay, the enemy came to steal, kill, and destroy, like, he is, like, killing, like, you know, people who are dealing with this.
Yes.
And that if it's not talked about, like, it's not brought into the light, like, then it's gonna stay something that is, like, you know, hidden in secret. And so I think it's just, like, one by one, people realizing that there is no, like, shame or condemnation for those who are, you know, walking with the Lord, and that this is, like, this is not a backpack you have to carry. It is not something that's, like, going to be hung over you the rest of your life or something you have to deal with.
Yeah. So I love how some of the bigger things that the enemy lies us about, and you addressed, it's One is that nobody cares.
Yeah.
Two is that it's the shame and condemnation that prevents people from sharing and also repenting.
Yeah.
And so all those things, and also believe that we can do it on our own.
Yeah.
And I love how you talk about all those things, because that those lies can really keep the person like stuck in a loop.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was what final straw of my recovery, was not doing it alone. Like, I think that's whenever I really realized that, like, I really have not wrestled. Okay, so this is, I guess, another important part to bring up is, I feel like I haven't really wrestled much with it, but not because of my own strength, but because I have other people who I know who are, like, there for me that I don't feel like I'm holding on my shoulders. I feel like we just saw the movie The Forge, like we're all holding each other up together kind of thing, and that's what I feel like with my own life, that like people are all there if I need it to hold me up, and also just guarding my heart. Like,
yes.
I think sometimes we underestimate as believers what does it mean to actually like walk it out and follow the Lord, and it's like I'm not too strong that I am insusceptible to like developing like like a part in me that still like follows and like loves like my eating disorder and stuff. So like I don't weigh myself, I don't focus on like all the practical stuff that is like I will not give any room for the enemy like in my life to let that grow again, like because it's it's like an idol. It could easily be an idol. And so, like, what does it practically look like, walking in recovery and with the Lord? It's like you cut it out. Like, you cut it all out. Like,
Yeah. It's like if your eye causes to sin, gouge it out. It's
yeah.
that you just kind of, not like physically, like literally, but like cut that part out of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable, but there's also so much more. Like, the Lord doesn't do it to, like, torture us. He does it to give us his rest. But yeah, that's my testimony. So do you have any more questions or anything else that you'd like to ask?
Yeah. Any last thoughts you like to leave for people?
I'm always free if you want to ever talk. Really, I feel like I do not mind giving you any time of day or whatever you like need. Just because I have walked this out for, so many years, like living with eating disorder, that like it really, I feel like, is what my heart breaks for, like one of the most things, because I've like experienced it, that like if you do feel alone at it at all, like you're welcome to reach out to me. And if not, I encourage you to reach out to somebody, because like having the lies alone in your head will only grow and multiply. And just realize that there is true hope for like you individually, and like within a year, like the Lord can do so much like in your life. Within a day he can, but like within a year he can transform everything. And like it'll be like for our whole lives, like to see what he does. But I really just don't want anyone to struggle alone. Like I think that's the biggest thing.
Would you like to pray
Sure.
for the people?
Yeah. Dear Lord, just thank you for this day and this podcast, and just that Alex hosting this, and just that you be glorified through this. And I pray for any listener who's listening to this podcast, just that they be encouraged and you renew their vision for their life, for the plans that you have, for any loss of hope that they may have felt by the enemy weighing down or anything, but you restore their hope through your lens, and just show them that you truly are the way, the truth, and the life, and just that these lies have no power in their life currently or in the future, and just that you're always there waiting for us to surrender to you. And so I pray that you break off and cast aside any of these burdens and just demonic strongholds that people are struggling with, because that's what it is, and just that embolden them to come into the light, and just realizing there is no fear in your love, and just that you are enough. And so I just pray that this reaches the people that it needs to, and that you be glorified, and just that you continue to teach us how to love and know you deeper. And so just thank you for this day and this time, and we love you. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.